And so I think some of these papers speak very much to those concerns. So we have two remote papers here. Unfortunately, neither Sheikh Habib Mazahir or Dr. Mustafa Movahedi were able to join us in person for this conference, but they've been kind enough to take the time to record video lectures for us. And so what we will do is we will actually start with one of those video lectures, and then we will alternate between video and live, just to keep things exciting for you all. And so we've got a series of lectures here. We've got from Ithna Ashariya to Western academia, 12 reactions to historical studies of the formation of 12 doctrine. From historicity to authoritativeness, can academic methods of hadith dating inform Imami traditional scholarship? Then we have Sheikh Afzal Marali presenting in person, exploring miracles from a religious perspective, navigating between the supernatural and the supra-rational. And finally, we have Professor Aoun Hassan Ali, who will be presenting on the sanctuary of the 12th Imam in Hilla. So this promises to be a really interesting panel. And now I'm going to invite up Professor Cyrus Zargar, who you recently met on panel 1, so he's becoming a permanent fixture here at ICAIR. He may just have to come on with us full time. He will be chairing this panel, so I'm going to hand over to him now. Please welcome him to the podium with a loud salawat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad.
Yeah, so history and theology should be something well known to those of us, which seems to be everyone here, interested in Shia studies. The Shia theology is tied to history. When we talk about the Ghadir Khum, why do we say that one should study history? It has a theological impact. Karbala, studies of Karbala, it tells you where you are and how you navigate. So there's I think, an intricate connection here in Shia studies between history and theology. And so it's with great pleasure that we begin these three papers. And we begin them with, starting with Sheikh Habib Mazahir. Sheikh Habib Mazahir graduated from University College with a bachelor's with honors in applied medical sciences in 2019, and an MA in philosophy, politics, and economics of health in 2020. Simultaneously, he completed his undergraduate Islamic seminary studies at the Hawza Ilmiya of England before migrating to the holy city of Qum, where he is currently completing a master's in Islamic philosophy and theology at the School of Islamic and Occidental Studies. His main interests revolve around jurisprudence, hadith, and Quranic exegesis. Please welcome his recorded lecture with a salawat bar Muhammad wa ali Muhammad.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان اللعين الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله وكفى وسلام على عباده الذين اصطفى. Respected scholars, my elders, brothers and sisters, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. The research that I would like to present to you today is something that I have worked on with my colleague Sayyid Ali Naki Zaidi, and this research was actually his idea in the first place. And it basically takes a very critical look at a famous work written in Western academia that looks at the historical perspective on the formation of 12-er doctrine. So the book in question that we wanted to look at is a very famous book, which is called Crisis and Consolidation in the Formative Period of Shiite Islam by Professor Sayyid Hussein Mudarrisi Tabatabai. The book was first written in English and printed by Princeton Press, and it was highly controversial, still is controversial, and the main argument of the book is that Shia theology that we know as today is very different to what it was during the times of the Imams. And basically the Shia theology has gone through successive periods of growth, alteration, and additions. And what's present at the time of the Imams initially is very different to what we have today. So things like, for example, the idea of belief in the Imams being infallible, belief in them having some kind of special knowledge of the unseen, some special kind of authority, or wilayat taqwiniya, and having some kind of supernatural abilities. These were all later additions that were added by other sects such as the Ghulat, or some of these beliefs were some stuff that the Shias themselves came to believe in gradually due to a crisis that occurred after the passing away of each Imam. So the argument is that at the passing away of each Imam, the Shia community were left in a crisis because they didn't know who the next Imam was. And successively, these crises happened, and after each crisis, gradually the theology of the Shia is changed. So this was like the overall general idea of the book. Again, it was originally written in English, and 2 years after that, an unofficial Farsi translation was published. But because it was unofficial, it wasn't really like, it didn't become really famous in the Hausa or within the Iranian circles. But 15 years after, a Farsi version, official Farsi translation was published, and since then it's been reprinted at least 8 times. And Hussein Mudarrisi himself has an introduction to the Farsi version. The reason why we wanted to look at this specific book is because of the number of responses that have been written against it, and critiques have written against it, because it had such a massive social spillover and so many effects that this book had. So for example, Professor Mohsin Kadivar famously came up with his idea of ulama al-abrar, basically the idea that the companions of the Imams only saw the Imams as pious scholars, and they didn't see them as infallible beings or divinely sent leaders. No, they were just considered as pious scholars. Now, many people who critiqued Kadivar, they linked this to Hussein Mudarrisi's book, and they said, no, see, he has got his ideas from the book Crisis and Consolidation. Another example of a social spillover of this book is Akbar Ganji, who is an Iranian dissident who lives in the US and is a journalist, who is a very vocal critic of the Iranian government. So he has openly said that he doesn't accept the system of Wilayatul Faqih, and he says that this system is based on the belief of a living 12th Imam. And he openly says that based on the research that has been presented in the book Crisis and Consolidation of Hussein Mudarrisi, the 12th Imam doesn't exist, and this was just something that the Shias came up with later on because they were in a form of crisis. And there is no strong evidence to suggest that the 12th Imam was born. And I'm sure you would know that even within reformist circles within our own communities, the book Crisis and Consolidation is very famously discussed and shared widely as a form of like questioning the normative orthodox account of what Shia theology is and how it developed. Now, in response to this, especially after the Farsi got translated into Farsi, there was a huge backlash, and a lot of like responses were written, academic critiques of the work. So in our research, what we did was, first we tried to gather as much as we can of how many like critiques were written against this book. So we found 64 works that were written against this book, ranging from articles to books to dissertations and to blog posts. So 64 different works, which amounts to more than 4,500 pages, which is interesting because the actual work of Mudarrisi, where he discusses these ideas, is only like 150 pages, the first half of the book. So in response to 150 pages, more than 4,500 pages have been written as a response, as a form of academic critique. But the unfortunate part is that all of this research remains in Farsi and Arabic. And so to an English-speaking audience, they are not aware of this kind of advanced research and critiques of this book. And they are only faced with the English book of Crisis and Consolidation, and they're not aware of the responses written against it. A lot of it has been written in Farsi, but a tiny bit has also been written in Arabic. I recently heard that last year in the month of Ramadan, Ayatollah Sistani's younger son, Sayyid Muhammad Aqir, he spent the whole month in his daily classes or sessions critiquing this book. So that's one of the latest things that we have in Arabic, although the recordings and transcripts of those lessons have not yet been made official to the public. But a lot has been written in Farsi. So what was Hussein Mudarrisi's response to all these critiques? It's very interesting that Hussein Mudarrisi has given several responses. He's got a couple of letters where in correspondence with the Iranian historian Rasul Jafarian. So in that, they have a lot of back and forth, and at one point, Rasul Jafarian tells him that, look, you wrote this book, and there's been a lot of backlash, and it's controversial, and how many critiques are being written against it. So one thing that Hussein Mudarrisi has emphasized quite a few times in these letters, as well as in the introduction to the Persian translation, as well as in a letter that he wrote last year, because last year another book came out critiquing Crisis and Consolidation, so the critique is still going on. And in response to that, Hussein Mudarrisi mentions the same point, and that is that whatever I wrote in that book was based on the standards of Western academia. And he asks for his work to be looked at gracefully in that sense, that it's not based on the standards that we accept or the methodology that we accept. This is based on Western academic standards. And he said, all I tried to do was present a history of Shia theology that could be more defendable within Western circles and more acceptable. And then interestingly, he says that I didn't know that there would be such a kind of backlash and people would be misguided, because Rasul Jafarian tells him that the people, the laity, they read your book and they become really confused and they're getting misguided. So in response, he says that I'm very shocked to hear this, because I've spent my life serving the Ahlul Bayt and I have deep and profound love for them, and I didn't expect such a response from people. I thought people would look at this book as a book of history. I didn't know people would take it as a book of theology. To the extent that he goes on to say is that at one point I considered, when I saw so many people are getting misguided by this book, I think it's better that I write a response to this book, a critique of this book, using a pseudonym, a fake name. But then for some reason he says that I didn't follow up that idea. But then I thought maybe I should encourage some of my other scholar friends to write critiques of this book, if this is the impact that it's having on society. Again, emphasizing that this was supposed to be just for Western academic standards. And in another letter, interestingly, he says that he complains that all these critiques that are being written about this book, the people who are writing these critiques, they forget the famous wise saying that says, Al-batilu yamutu bitarki dhikrihi. Falsehood finishes or dies by you not mentioning it, or you not discussing it. So he says by people discussing it, writing critiques, they just make it more popular. Whereas if they would not have done this, it would have just remained within Western academic circles and it would have died a natural death. But of course, the critics had to write their critiques because it was having an impact on the faith of people. And so in terms of the responses that we have seen, rather than just presenting a translation of the responses, what we attempted to do in our research was to try and categorize the different responses that have been written against the book and try and see if we can find some kind of themes or groupings of these responses. So some of them that, just an example I'll present over here, some responses are focused on methodological critique of the work. So they go and say, okay, what are these Western academic standards that you're using, which is a form of trying to judge theology by historical standards. So they go in depth and they critique the methodologies used by Hussein Mudarrisi in this book. Other critiques focus on the research flaws within the book. So for example, many works would try and pick out incorrect references within the book, where Mudarrisi has made an argument and brought a reference, but then they would say, okay, he's basing this on this evidence, but he's not referenced it properly. In fact, the reference is giving us something other than what he's trying to portray. Or cherry picking, for example, where if you have, let's say 20 pieces of 20 narrations, Mudarrisi has only picked 2 or 3 that fit his narrative. Others, for example, have brought the question of incomplete quotations and how if you look at a full hadith in its full context, you get something very different to what Hussein Mudarrisi is trying to portray. And others have said, for example, that there is a lack of engagement with counter evidence. Again, if 5 historical reports support a narrative that's being presented by Mudarrisi, there are 15 reports that go against it. But Mudarrisi does not challenge those other reports or give some kind of answer to that. Others have tried to show that one of Mudarrisi's main ideas is to say that some of these beliefs that we have are later additions. So for example, the belief in that the Imams had some kind of supernatural knowledge. Okay, let's say it's a later addition by the Ghulat. So these group of scholars, what they've tried to do is they have picked each and every part of 12 theology, and using a historical methodology, they've tried to and attempted to show that no, these beliefs existed within the Shia from the earliest days. So using a historical method, they're trying to show that you can't say these were later additions by the Ghulats. No, in the early days, we have historical evidence that the Shias did believe in this. So they take that route. Then others, for example, have focused on the aspect of the Ghulats and whether or not they had a significant impact on our Hadith corpus. One of Mudarrisi's main arguments is that the Hadith corpus has been tampered by the Ghulat. So they tried to show that historically speaking, no, the Hadith corpus was transferred in a very secure way, and the Ghulat did not have such an effect or such a large impact that Mudarrisi is trying to show. It's interesting to note, by the way, that there are significant differences between the Farsi translation and the original English. In fact, Mudarsi himself alerts to this point in the introduction, and he says that there's some stuff that I'm writing in the Farsi, especially in the footnotes, that I could not have said in the English because, again, it's written for a Western academic standard, and they would not accept that. So the Farsi has differences to the English, which Mudarsi notes himself. So now, what I want to do over here is to just, as a case study or as example, show you one of the arguments of Mudarsi in the 3rd chapter of his book, and to show you some of the critiques that have been written against it. So in the 3rd section of his book that deals specifically with the 12th Imam and the Ghaiba, one of the arguments that he brings is very similar to an argument brought by the Israeli professor Eitan Kohlberg. So Eitan Kohlberg in the 1970s wrote an article which was titled From Imamiyya to Ithna Ashariya. And a lot of the arguments that Eitan Kohlberg brings, Hussein Mudarsi also brings in his book, and he quotes Kohlberg as well. So this can be seen as a critique of both Mudarsi and Kohlberg. What they both say is that the initial Shias were known as Imamiyya, in the sense that their main tenet and in theology was that we have to believe in an Imam who is sent by God, he's a divine Imam, but they did not say that the Imams were limited to 12. They were of the belief that the Imams would continue till the Day of Judgment. So we would have an infinite chain of Imams until the Day of Judgment. The early Shias never believed in 12 Imams, or what we are known as Ithna Ashariya. So when did this idea of 12 Imams come into play? They say that this happened towards the end of the Ghaibat al-Sughra, the minor occultation, and towards the start of the Ghaibat al-Kubra. In that period, the Shias were faced with a dilemma, and they were in a crisis, because they thought, okay, the Imams would continue coming one after the other until the Day of Judgment. But then they realized, hang on, our Imam has gone into occultation, doesn't seem like he's coming back anytime soon, so what do we do now? And here what they did is they looked towards the Sunni sources, and they saw that in the Sunni sources, the Sunni books of Hadith, we have prophetic narrations that say that the Prophet prophesied that there will be 12 Imams. And they were like, hang on, we've had 12 Imams, and the Hadith prophesies 12 Imams. Oh, so that means the Prophet is talking about us. So they took those Hadiths from the Sunni sources, and then that's how the idea of Ithna Ashariya came into play. So what's the proof that he brings for this idea? He says, well, the proof is that if you look at the books of the Shias written before the Ghaibat al-Sughra, you don't find any mention of this idea of 12 Imams. It's not there. So for example, if you look at the Usul al-Arba'amiyya, these are 400 principles or 400 notebooks, you can say, written by the companions of mostly Imam al-Sadiq and the later Imams, where they would listen to the Imam and write down the narrations, which came to be known as the 400 principles. Out of the 400 principles, today we only have 16 available. So he says, look, if you look at the available principles that we have, the 16 principles from the original 400, which were written at the time of the Imams, there is no mention of 12 Imams. Again, second example is Muhammad bin Hassan al-Saffar al-Qummi's Basair al-Darajat, a famous book written about the virtues of the Aimma of the Ahlul Bayt, written again, Muhammad bin Hassan al-Saffar died in 290. The Ghaibat al-Sughra came towards an end, towards the middle part of 300, so around 330 onwards. And their argument is that this belief came into play around 330 to 350 Hijrah. So in Basair al-Darajat, which is, the author died in 290, you have no mention of 12 Imams. And then they say, okay, so the 12 Imams hadith came from Sunni sources. So Mudarsi says, in fact, there is no evidence in any work written before the last decades of the 3rd century that suggests that this statement had ever attracted the attention of the Shiite traditionists, or that anyone in the Shiite community had ever thought that it might concern them. The Imami scholar Muhammad ibn Hassan al-Saffar, for instance, does not refer to that statement in his book, Basair al-Darajat, which is a collection of hadiths on the virtues of the Imams. So, very briefly, I would like to present some of the answers that have been given. Again, because of lack of time, I'll just suffice with very few simple answers that have been given. So first of all, the 400 principles, of which we only have 16. The question comes that because we only have 16 principles, how can you negate that, okay, none of the other principles have any mention of the 12 Imams? Is it even possible to affirm or negate the existence of a certain idea in a certain period if we don't have access to most of the written works of that period? These 400 principles, of which we only have 16, the rest we don't have access to. So how can you say those that we don't have access to, they didn't mention 12 Imams? Secondly, these later compilations that we have, that do have the narration of the 12 Imams, we know with their chains, they are telling us that we are relying on earlier works, such as these 400 principles that we don't have anymore. So if the later works are saying we are relying on the earlier works, on what evidence are we saying that these later works are either fabrications or taking from Sunni works, when there clearly the authors are saying that we took from the early works? And then, simply put, even these 16 principles that we have, which are published now, you can read it, it's there in Arabic, Kitab Usul al-Sittat Ashar, the 16 principles that we have. The interesting part is that we actually do have narrations that show that there are 12 Imams within these remaining 16 principles. So for example, Imam Sajjad in the Asl of Abi Sa'id Abbad al-Usfuri says, indeed Allah created from the light of His greatness Muhammad, Ali and 11 from his descendants. He then placed them as figures in the brightness of His light where they worshipped Him before the creation of the creatures. They would glorify Allah and extol Him. They are the Imams from the progeny of the Messenger of Allah. So this is a work that Mudarrisi and Kohlberg were saying that it has no mention of the 12 Imams. But here clearly Imam Sajjad is reporting about 12 Imams. Another narration, again in the same Asl, Imam al-Baqir quotes the Prophet as saying, indeed me and 11 of my descendants and you, O Ali, so 11 plus Imam Ali, that's 12, are the pegs of the earth. Going on to another piece of evidence that Mudarrisi quoted was that, okay, how come we don't have any mention of this in Basair al-Darajat, which was written before the Ghaibat al-Sughra? Well, actually, within the Basair al-Darajat, there are at least 6 narrations that talk about 12 Imams. Now, Mudarrisi in the Farsi version, actually, in his footnote, he mentions that there are 2 narrations, but he says, no, those are later interpolations. But no, we're saying not even 2, there's at least 6 narrations that clearly talk about 12 Imams in the same work that was claimed to have no evidence or no mention of 12 Imams. So for example, Imam al-Baqir says, the 12 Imams from the progeny of Muhammad are all muhaddath, meaning those who speak to the angels. Another hadith is from Imam Ali where he was heard saying, indeed me and my successors from my progeny are the rightly guided ones and all of us are muhaddath, meaning we speak to angels. So I said, the reporter says, O Commander of the Faithful, who are they? So he said, Al-Hasan and Al-Hussein and then my son Ali ibn al-Hussein. And the narrator said, at that time, Ali was an infant. Ali ibn al-Hussein was an infant. And then Imam Ali continues, and then 8 after him, one after another. So again, a clear piece of evidence in a work written before Ghaibat al-Sughra that's clearly talking about 12 Imams. And again, this work has at least 6 narrations. As for the argument that this hadith was from Sunni sources, so one piece of research is very interesting. They went into Sunni works and they said, look, within the Sunni or earliest Sunni works that is being referred to by Mudarrisi, there are 3 such narrations from the Prophet about the 12 Imams, which have been narrated by 4 companions, Ibn Mas'ud, Jabir ibn Samura, Sa'd ibn Abi Waqqas, and Abu Juhayfa. But if you consider how this hadith has been transmitted in Sunni sources in the first 2 centuries, we find that after these 4 narrators, there are 200 other narrators who have been spreading this hadith within the Sunni literature. So just looking at the Sunni literature, actually we can show that from these 200 narrators, around 25 to 30% of these narrators are classified as Imami Shi'i based on Sunni Rijal works. So Sunni Rijal works are saying that about 50 narrators of these hadiths in Sunni works are Shia. So how can you say, for example, that the Shias were not paying attention to these narrations? Now, within our written work and our research, we analyzed many more of Mudarrisi's arguments and his evidence, and this was just an example. And in the end, I just want to present what has happened after these critiques have been written. So according to Hadi Girami, he says that with the translation of this book, Crisis and Consolidation, the field of intellectual history has now been opened up in the Hausa. And scholars from within the Hausa are now saying that we need to now write our own intellectual history based on our own methodology. Otherwise, you'll get works like this. And so we need to produce local works using our standards. And then now there's a lot of theoretical debate and discussion going on about how will our methodologies compare with that of Western academia. How, for example, what are the limits of history and theology and how do they work with each other? So this is like an ongoing discussion that's happening right now on how are we going to write our own intellectual history. 2 scholars that I would like to just mention at the end who are very famous right now and working in this area. One is Sheikh Muhammad Taqi Subhani on the left. He has a nexus of institutes in Qom. He and his institute have released about 10 books, again, based on this idea of intellectual history, where they look at the different theological schools during each period and how they developed using our own standards. And then we have Dr. Pakchi, who is based in Tehran, Ahmed Pakchi. Him and his students have also tried to do something similar. So these 2 are figures right now who are famously working in this area and are considered to be at the forefront of intellectual history. And this is what I would like to have presented today about the recent developments that's happening in the Hausa after the critiques of Crisis and Consolidation. Thank you very much for listening to me. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Just to make a quick announcement, primarily aimed at those watching from home in Toronto, we've had a lot of questions asking if there are still tickets available to come and attend in person either later today or tomorrow, and I just wanted to let people at home know that yes, there is still space available, and if you would like to attend in person either for the last session of today or attend for the full day tomorrow, we'll be able to accommodate you, so do come. And now I'm going to stop hijacking this panel and give it back to its the proper authorities, Professor Sarasagar. Salawat.
For our second paper, I'd like to welcome Sheikh Afzal Mirali. Sheikh Afzal Mirali is the manager of the Islamic Education Department of the World Federation, where he oversees internal tabligh within the Khoja and English-speaking world, digital tabligh, and publications. Originally from Tanzania, he moved to the UK at a young age. Starting from the age of 16, he has been doing Hausa studies for over 2 decades and is fluent in 7 languages. He studied in the houses of Lebanon, reaching the level of Bahth Kharij in Islamic jurisprudence and its principles, while also specializing in Quranic sciences and tafsir and the methodology of tabligh. He has a master's degree in Islamic studies from Middlesex University, where his thesis was titled Muslim Minorities, the Ideal Community Center. Sheikh Afzal also has vast experience in the media, in which he worked for 6 years. He has been an active muballigh globally for the past 15 years in English, Arabic, and Gujarati, and teaches Hausa studies in London. Since his appointment as IE manager in 2021, a new 5-year IE strategy was formed, and the department has witnessed an exponential increase in activities in digital tabligh, in World Federation social media, publications, and courses. Sheikh Afzal was also one of the key founding members of ICAIR. The title of his paper today is Exploring Miracles from a Religious Perspective, Navigating Between the Supernatural and Supra-Rational. Please join me in welcoming Sheikh Afzal with a salawat. Allah.
صلى على محمد وعلى محمد. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الخلق سيدنا محمد وعلى آل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين. اللهم صل على محمد وعلى محمد. Can I humbly request if you can just restart this video kindly, please? Can I humbly request the AV room to kindly restart this video? Thank you so much. I request the audience to look at this video. It is from one of the shrines, the shrine of Sayyidah Khawla in Baalbek in Lebanon. I'll explain to you each and every single thing that you are seeing right now. If you look at the Menara, you find that it's blackish in color. This was golden brass that the shrine had been plated with just a couple of 2-3 weeks before it all of a sudden turning black in color. This is, well, maybe not that good of a photo due to the sun, but you can try to make out of it the golden color of the dome, and the menorah from that side has turned very dark, very black. Over here, if you look at the menorah from this side, from the left side, you can see that there is something kind of spilling. This was a red liquid that had come out of it. If you look at this darih and focus a little bit as it's zooming in, you will see that there is a shade of red on the darih. This was an internal wall, a wall in this shrine. And over here, what happened is that blood, the red color blood, it was oozing out of it. And whatever would be wiped, it would just start to flow again. Do excuse the amateur videography. This is an even clearer image of this red liquid. Thank you. Okay, so what was the story of this? In 2013, approximately, I think, was around the first 10 days of the month of May, I received a call. This time I was living in Beirut. So I received a call that there is an event that has happened in the shrine of Sayyidah Khawla, a shrine about, there is much debate about the person who is buried in it, whether she is, as it's posted out in the sign, the daughter of Imam Hussein alayhi salam, whether she is, or the person buried in it is amongst the awliya or not. So with that call, all of a sudden, of course, I took my family and we went to Baalbek from Beirut. As we got around the beginnings, the outskirts of Baalbek, all of a sudden the roads were clogged. They were closed. Cars were parked everywhere, so we had to go on foot, walk quite a long distance. As I arrived over there, I saw the convoy of Sayyid Isa Tabtabai, the custodian of the shrine of Sayyidah Khawla, who had supervised and oversaw the building, the construction of the shrine in this manner. When I got over there, I saw that this menorah and this golden dome that I used to pass by approximately every week, this golden plating, the golden brass, which had just been recently plated over the menorahs, the two menorahs and the dome, just a couple of weeks before that, I find that all of a sudden, what has happened is that these have turned black. In one go, all of a sudden they turned black. An event, something had happened within the shrine. It seems that one of the Zuwar had asked for a sign to show, and he gone to the darih, to ask for a sign to show that this is a person that has a certain karama and honor before Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And over there, in addition to these turning black, you could also see in the video that there was what? There was some red liquid oozing out from the menorah and some red liquid oozing out from a wall that is the encaving wall that within, on the other side of it is a tree that is ascribed to Imam Zain al-Abidin alayhi salam, that he was the one who planted the seeds of. When he buried this personality during the passing of the prisoners, the captives of Ahlul Bayt alayhi salam, in their journey from Karbala to Kufa and then all around northern Iraq, South Turkey, Syria, then Lebanon, and then all the way to Damascus. Furthermore, you could see that whenever you would wipe out, it would gush out. But what actually then happened is that later on, when I went to touch it, it shows that it's there, but you can only feel the wall. It's not something physically that leaves a certain kind of smooth, you can't feel the texture of it as opposed to normal blood that would stick somewhere, which was something really interesting. And even today, when you go over there to the shrine, you'll find that it's the same color now. The golden manara, it's now blackish, and the same with respect to the dome. Connotations of it, when I was looking towards the different types of karamat and miracles that happen in the shrines of the awliya, of the anbiya alayhi salam, I found that the gushing and the oozing of a red liquid blood is only related to those personalities considered to have some link with Karbala. Whether this is the shrine of Sayyid al-Shuhada salamullahi alayhi, and you find in the museum that there is some dust, some turba, considered to be from the grave, it turns red. And they even put it on Karbala channel, you can find it. Once in the shrine of Sayyidah Zainab salamullahi alayha, when I was visiting in 2006, I was there with some relatives, and we saw that all of a sudden, the manara itself, it turned red. So we haven't seen such karamat in other places, which is an indication, most probably, that this is a personality that most probably was martyred from within the group of captives of Ahlul Bayt alayhim salam. But from this, can we deduce that this was actually the daughter of Imam Hussein alayhi salam? Well, according to our adillah, we cannot confirm lineage through these type of karamat. There is no dalil on that. So the most kind of suspicion that we may have is that this is from that particular group of captives of Ahlul Bayt alayhim salam. Can we go to the slides, please? Yes, can we go to, because unfortunately I can't move it from the tablet. Can we go to the 5th slide, please? The abstract? Yes. This paper, it explores the notion of miracles in religion. That is to say, it will compare Islamic and Christian beliefs, and also argues that there is a difference between such occurrences that happen at the hands of those who claim prophethood or imamah, and those feats that happen at the hands of those who do not claim such a claim. There is a certain technical difference. It will also probe into the nature of miracles and reasons that they are, and the paper reasons that miracles are both supernatural and supra-rational. And we will also answer and prove this fact by referring to transcendental philosophical concepts from Falsafat al-Hikmah al-Muta'aliya from al-Sadra, and also certain Aristotelian logical paradigms. We'll also discuss a bit about about the theories of the ulama regarding the miraculous dimensions of the Holy Quran, insha'Allah. Can we go to slide number 7, please? Introduction. Thank you. Since time immemorial, religious history has been full of accounts of extraordinary feats carried out by saints and prophets. And these can be found, of course, in all religions alike, all the different messages. In Islam in the general sense, not the Islam with the Risala that was brought by the Holy Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. No, Islam in the sense that in Dina and Allah Islam, from the time of Nabi Adam alayhi salam. Some of these miracles will become famous, others will be forgotten over a period of time. Although one question is posed, of course, whether miracles are supra or supernatural, and are they also supra-rational? So in order for us to answer this question, we need to go into a more technical side of things. We need to go into the definitions. What is a miracle? Now, there are... Oh, thank you so much. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa Muhammad. So a miracle in the English language, etymologically, in terms of language, it has around 3 definitions. I'll just focus on the one that is pertinent to us. The third one, it is an unusual and mysterious event that is thought to have been caused by a god because it does not follow the normal or the usual laws of nature. And in that Cambridge Dictionary definition, they mentioned the examples. Jesus Christ was said to have performed miracles like turning water into wine. This is according to them. In the Arabic language or in Arabic etymology, there are different words that are used to indicate such a happening. Number 1 is the word u'juba. U'juba, maybe some of us are hearing it for the first time. The word u'juba, it means something which is a wonder, something that is wondrous, something that is kind of like something that is not expected, something that is new. It's something that is unbelievable. Number 2, the word mu'jiza, that is used in order to indicate something that others are incapable of doing. And the word ayah is mentioned in the Holy Quran. It is the Quranic terminology for miracles. It means a sign, basically. But what about terminologically? In Christianity, because this is a comparison between these two religions, Samuel Clarke, he writes, the definition of a miracle in the theological sense of the word is that this is a work effected in a manner, it is a work effected in a manner unusual or of some intelligent agent superior to man for the proof or evidence of some particular doctrine, to prove a certain religion's validity and legitimacy and authenticity, or in attestation to the authority of some particular person. This is a prophet, for example. David Hume, he defined miracles just by saying it is a violation of the laws of nature. Catholics believe that miracles are works of God done through either his own choice or based on the intercession of a certain saint or a prophet. Miracles can be performed in Christianity by not only biblical prophets or biblical saints, but even by modern day pious people whose supernatural feats are judged with strict requirements by the churches and by the Vatican. And should a person have 2 or more such supernatural feats under their belt, quote unquote, they are considered to be saints. And this can also happen posthumously. There's a certain criteria for that. You have the Congregation for the Causes of Saints that exists. Going to the Islamic definition of it, just trying to be mindful of the time. In Islam, when a person who is divinely appointed by Allah, such as a prophet, an imam, is sent to the people with a message which embodies the path that Allah wants for them, the most important obstacle is to try to ensure that the people accept. If we want these people to accept, and especially the bigger the claim is, the more powerful and grander the proof must be. So if he claims to be sent by Allah, he needs to give us some proof. The mu'jiza, the miracle, is considered by Islamic theologians to be the ambassador's credentials. You know, when a new ambassador is appointed in a certain country, they will have to go to either the monarch or they will have to go to the president of the country, whatever, and they will have to submit their ambassador's credentials, and then these are accepted. So this is similar, that the prophet, the imam, alayhi salam, they are giving these, they are showing these to us so that we can know that they are truthful in their claim. Definition: it is defined in Islamic theology as a feat that is performed by a person who claims to be divinely appointed, such as a prophet or an imam, who does the miracle with the permission of Allah, with it being something that goes against the norms of nature, without being replicable by anybody. Nobody can come tomorrow and say, oh no, I can also turn my stick into a snake. Nobody will ever be able to do that. However strong their AI machines or whatever are, they won't be able to do that. At the same time, this is something that goes against the norms of nature in terms of the chain of causality, which I'll come to explain. With that, and this also is a sign of the truthfulness of the person's claim. There must be a claim of divine appointment connected to this miracle for it to be considered as a mu'jiza. Okay? A mu'jiza. With respect to people who do not have such a claim, this is called a karama. The same feat, maybe of a lesser level, but this is called a karama. And also this feat should be exactly in the same way as they say that it will be. So if they say that I will bring out a camel from a mountain, but then all of a sudden an elephant came instead of a camel, this is not considered to be a mu'jiza. It's a big thing, but it's not a mu'jiza. It's not a technical mu'jiza. It also must be coupled by an open challenge to everybody to try to replicate it. Just like the Holy Quran, it challenged the Arabs to even be able to bring 3 verses of a surah, like Surah Al-Kawthar, which they failed to do so. So this is how much context there is with respect to the Islamic view on what a miracle is. طيب. Now, unfortunately, I don't have time to explain the karama, what it is in much detail. In all cases, are miracles supernatural and supra-rational? That we need to understand what these two words mean before we answer the question. Firstly, supernatural is defined as of or relating to an existence, beyond the visible, observable universe, especially of or relating to God or a god or demigod, spirit or devil. This is in the dictionaries, in Merriam-Webster dictionary. Departing from what is usual or normal, especially so as to appear to transcend the laws of nature. This is supernatural. Attributed to an invisible agent. They also consider ghosts to be doing things that are supernatural. Are miracles supernatural? This is the first question. Among the biblical miracles reported to have been done by Nabi Isa salamullahi alayhi was the curing of lepers, correct? He was curing lepers without medicine, and he would also raise the dead. According to the laws of nature and established scientific research, leprosy is such a disease that if left untreated, it can cause nerve damage, result in the crippling of the hands and feet, paralysis, and blindness. In the Bible, it is mentioned that Nabi Isa alayhi salam cured lepers with miracles on the spot, just by uttering the words, "Be clean." This is according to the biblical references, without any recourse to medicine. So, based on that, we find that according to Christianity, a miracle is supernatural. But what about Islam? In Islam, miracles of all divinely appointed people, saints, that includes prophets and also imams according to us Shias. All of these are considered to be within the framework of what is supernatural. These miracles are considered to be, of course, supernatural, because of the fact that these are carried according to the definition, right? These are carried by a person claiming divine appointment against the laws of nature, not replicable, etc. And according to the definition of the supernatural that we just said, ascribed by a higher power, an invisible power, etc. So, according to Islam, it is also supernatural as well. A humorous example is that it should happen exactly how the Prophet says. And when Musaylim al-Kadhab, the liar, the fabricator, who claimed to be a prophet after the Holy Prophet, when he tried to claim that he is also a prophet, they told him, okay, listen, we'll humor you. You claim to be a prophet. So the prophet, he spoke and he called a tree to come to him, and it came. You go and bring a tree. So he called once, twice, the tree is not coming. So he went and walked by himself to the tree. He said, listen, we prophets, we are humble people. If the tree doesn't come to us, we go to the tree. All right? They said, okay, we'll give you another test. This person is losing hair. Look at his hair. He's losing, he's got bald patches. With a miracle, wipe over his head so that the hair can start to regrow. He said, okay, I'll do it. He went. And then he wiped off the person's head. But instead of new hair growing, the rest of his hair started to fall as well. Now, this is contrary to what he was claiming. So with this, if we were to look at the example of Nabi Musa alayhi salam, as a result of him striking the sea with his staff, it parted into two high-rising mountain-like kind of waves. This is contrary to the norms of nature, because the sea does not part just by touching of a staff. Are they supra-rational? What is supra-rational? What is rational, first of all? Let us define that. Something which is consistent with and based on reason or good judgment. Or in philosophy and the science of logic, it is the study. Rational is the study of the principles and criteria of valid inference and demonstration. To say that if I were to take so-and-so argument, then I could infer, I can have a consequence or a result of it, is so-and-so is. For example, if I say, let's say, for example, that the temperature outside, let's say, for example, is, 0 degrees. Then I can infer from that 0 degrees is going to be cold. So if somebody is wearing a jacket, then, of course, they are wearing it in order to protect themselves from the cold. a method of human thought that involves taking in a linear step-by-step manner in terms of thinking. Supra-rational as a word, it is defined as transcending the rational. It is based on or involving factors that cannot be comprehended by reason alone, not understandable by reason alone. I will suffice with this linguistic definition, and we go then to answer. Is the Holy Quran considered to be supra-rational? Or sorry, the miracles in general. Hopefully we'll try to come to the Quran. Returning to this definition of the rational and supra-rational as something that is beyond logic, or something that is beyond the capacity of reason alone. Beyond the capacity of reason alone. If reason comes with divine revelation, a person may be able to understand some of the nature of it. The higher their level of perfection. So, with that being said, we can come to understand that supra-rational, a miracle is something beyond the capacity of reason itself. How so? Let us think about this, right? When we want to understand the cause of a miracle, for example, the staff of Nabi Musa turning into a snake, we will ask ourselves the following questions, okay? First of all, what has happened? What is the actual cause of this? How does the divine permission factor into this? How does Ism al-A'zam factor into this? Is Ism al-A'zam just open sesame? Is it like a secret word? Or is it an indication of the manifestation of the divine attributes on the soul of this prophet or of this Imam, to the extent that he can channel the infinite power of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to make this or that thing happen with the permission of Allah? Also, what actually happened to the staff? Was it a case of speed exchange like the case of Nabi Ismail and the sheep, alayhi salam? Or is it that Nabi Musa alayhi salam had control of time in such a way that the nitrogen cycle was made to happen so quickly in the time of a blink of an eye that it was turned from a staff into a snake immediately, something that may take thousands of years to happen in normal times? All of these are questions. We can't understand this, the meaning of it. So as a result, we say it's supra-rational. But is it illogical? Is a miracle illogical? When we talk about something being illogical, we're referring to things such as the principles of logic and philosophy. Like what? Like the principle of causality. The principle of causality dictates that every effect must have a cause. Is a miracle without a cause? No. On the contrary, it does have a cause. A miracle does have a cause. But we just need to understand that there are different types of causes. First of all, there are the ordinary causes which go through a chain. If I use my hand, if I exert force into it, having touched a knob of a door, the handle of a door, what will happen is that the handle as I turn my hand, this force is exerted on the handle will turn, the door will open. This is the normal causes. But the highest of causes that exist at the end of this chain is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. What is happening is that this ma'soom, infallible, is bypassing all of this chain and going directly to the extraordinary, the supernatural, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that cause, the highest of causes. As a result, Allah says, for example, to the fire, become cold and peaceful for Ibrahim, and it does, without having to put water or flowers or this, it by itself. That's it. With this respect, just very, very quickly, I would like to refer to the example of the Holy Quran. How can we consider it to be a miracle? Is the Holy Quran a miracle? What do our scholars say about this? There are 15 different explanations for the nature of the Quran as being a miracle, according to our scholars. The first possible explanation is what is known as as-sirfa. As-sirfa is the view of Shaykh al-Mufid, who considered that people of the time, Arabs, naturally did have the ability of creating something like the Holy Quran. But when He revealed it, Allah took that ability from them, incapacitated them. Excuse me. However, not all Shia scholars adhere to this view. I personally feel that it's a kind of limitation to the power of Allah, who actually can bring something that is not going to be possible for human beings. The second possible explanation or dimension of Quran's miracle is the sublime eloquence of the Holy Quran, in that the use of the Arabic words is extremely accurate in terms of their not being synonyms in the Holy Quran. Each word has its own indication, like the use of linguistic beautifiers, analogies, etc. In addition, it is an innovative new form of literature, neither prose nor poetry, 16 scales of poetry of Arabic. It is a recitation, and made in such an easy way, such a rhythmic, intonated way that it is soothing for the soul. There is no contradiction in any part of the Holy Quran. It has prophecies about the future. Abu Lahab, you are going to die a disbeliever and you will perish. They told him, Abu Lahab, okay, just to disprove the Holy Quran, come and say I'm a Muslim, just pretend. He said, no. Thus what? Thus proving that the prophecy was true. There are many other explanations. Unfortunately, my time has run out, and I'm mindful of this matter. I'll just conclude with the sentence, the fact that there are many different facets to this discussion that need to be probed more. Of course, one of them is also with respect to miracles that happen by non-Muslim saints for non-Muslims. What is the Islamic theological view about this? First of all, does it happen and can it happen? Yes, it can happen. People who are truly pious and righteous in their intention towards Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, but it is not an indication of the validity of the belief according to Islamic perception or the Islamic theological position. In all cases, this is also something that needs further scrutiny, also to explore the position of Al-Ism Al-Azam further as well. With that, I take the opportunity to thank you all and the community for this beautiful conference and for allowing us to be at your service. Sallallahu ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad.
Thank you very much. As we know, this issue of miracles, incredibly important in the history of Islamic theology, connected to matters of causality. It's a very interesting topic. Hopefully we can explore it more in the future. So our next paper will also be a remote presentation. Dr. Mustafa Movahedi Far is an associate research fellow at ICAIR. He's one of our own. After obtaining his bachelor's in mechanical engineering, he pursued an MA in the science of Quran and Hadith at the University of Quran and Hadith in Tehran. His MA thesis examined the methods of Hadith criticism used by earlier Imami scholars to assess the authoritativeness, the hujjiyah of Hadith. He then moved to the University of Birmingham for his doctoral research, where he completed his PhD in Islamic studies. His doctoral work involved the development and testing of an innovative method of Hadith criticism known as biobibliographical cross-reference analysis. This method was designed to investigate and determine the date and origin of Imami Hadiths, drawing from the development and transmission history of Imami Hadith during the formative phase of Twelver Shi'ism. His most recent research focuses on developing a systematic and rigorous method for the isnad kum matn and analysis of hadiths by employing machine learning and digital, mechanized, and mathematical tools. So please help me welcome Dr. Mustafa Movahedi Far with a salawat bar Muhammad wa ali Muhammad.
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Salamun alaikum wa rahmatullah. Dear brothers and sisters, hope you are well, inshallah, and thank you very much for having me in this great conference. And also I would like to thank the organizers, especially Sheikh Alexander Khalili and brother Ali Mehdi Nanjiani and all other brothers and sisters at ICAIR. Sorry, I don't know all the names. And so sorry, I couldn't travel to Toronto to sort of deliver this presentation and meet you in person. And hope my presentation, inshallah, would be useful for you. And of course, I would love to hear and know your comments and points of view on my arguments. And yeah, as you can see, the title of my presentation is From Historicity to Authoritativeness, Can Academic Methods of Hadith Dating Inform Imami Traditional Scholarship? And I'm going to briefly discuss why I think we need to apply the methods developed in academic scholarship to sort of traditional Hawzawi scholarship, and not only for sort of examining the history and historicity, authoritativeness of hadith, but also for better understanding of our i'tiqadat. And by i'tiqadat, I mean all those genres of hadith we have on Tawheed, Imama, Nubuwwah, and of course the existence of Imam Zaman and his birth and his occultation and so on and so forth, the roles of Imams, the characteristics of Imams and so on and so forth. So this is very important. We need to use some sort of hadith, method of hadith criticism to deal with these kind of genres of hadith we have in Imami hadith collections. So let me a little bit explain about the main concern and actually question generally academic scholarship seek to answer and deal with. So the main question, as you can see, is what really happened during the early Islamic century. So this is the main question academic scholars actually seek to deal with. And based on this general question, they try to deal with the question of whether a particular hadith found in both Shia and Sunni hadith collection can go back to the time of the authority and the time to which it purports to belong or not. This means that, as you know, each hadith has sort of two parts, matn or text and isnad, chain of transmitters. The isnad usually tells us the alleged source or authority of this particular hadith. For instance, the main origin or authority of this hadith is the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ himself, or Shia Imams, Imam Ja'far as-Sadiq alayhi salam, Imam Raza alayhi salam, and of the companions of the Prophet Muhammad or the companions of Imams. So we can realize the main authority of each hadith, usually based on its isnad. So based on academic sort of approach, the question is whether this hadith and its text and all parts of this hadith and the contents of this hadith can really go back to the time of the Prophet or his companions or Shia Imams or not. This is the main concern of academic scholars. And they try to investigate the sort of history and historicity of these hadiths based on some particular methods. Since 19th century, these scholars have developed. So I'll discuss some of these methods later in the following slides, actually. So, but the main concern of traditional scholars is hujjiyah, and whether they can use a particular hadith as a source of law or i'tiqadat. And as you know, the predominant approach in sort of traditional Hawzawi scholarship is transmitter criticism. And although this is not always the case in Hawza, but one of the main methods they use is a transmitter criticism. They actually generally examine the trustworthiness or religious affiliation of each transmitter mentioned in an isnad to see whether a hadith is authentic in the sense of and in the terms of hujjiyah or not. And if I want to compare academic and traditional scholarship, I would say there are some, imagine there are some hadiths, the dates of which can sort of go back to the times of Shia Imams, but because the isnads consist of untrustworthy transmitters or non-Shia transmitters, non-Imami transmitters, they might not be considered as authentic. And also maybe a particular hadith is considered as authentic by traditional scholars because of its isnad, but based on academic approach, it cannot be dated to the time of Imams or the Prophet Muhammad or the companions of Prophet and Shia Imams. So the main question, what should we do? Even if we accept that we can use this method of hadith criticism, I mean transmitter criticism for fiqh, which I think generally we cannot use because I explained why. Even if we accept that this sort of method for fiqh, is it possible to apply it to other genres of hadith, like theological, eschatological, like ahadith and tawheed, ahadith on the characteristics of imams, the roles of imams, and so on and so forth. And you can see even some contemporary Imami scholars easily using isnad criticism and transmitter criticism to reject the authenticity and historicity of some important hadith simply because of their isnads. While I provide, inshallah, some examples of some projects we are working on at ICAIR, the historical reliability and historicity of which can be determined based on some academic methods. So this was generally speaking my main argument and why I think we need to reconsider traditional approaches in Hausa. And you can also see several scholars like Grand Ayatollah Sayyid Sistani, Sayyid Musa Zanjani, Ayatollah Sayyid Madadi. They try to develop other sort of methods of hadith criticism based on the approaches of the compilers of the 4 books, Al-Kutub al-Arba', as you can see, Al-Kafi, compiled by Muhammad ibn Yaqub al-Kulayni, Kitab Man La Yahzul Faqih, compiled by Muhammad ibn Ali al-Saduq, Tahzib al-Ahkam al-Istibsar, both compiled by Muhammad ibn al-Hasan al-Tusi. Another issue I mentioned briefly in the previous slide is that if we accept that transmitter criticism is a proper method for examining the authenticity of all genres of hadith, in this way we should reject a large number of hadith in Al-Kafi, Al-Faqih, Tahzib and Al-Istibsar. Approximately more than 30% of hadith found in Al-Kutub al-Arba' based on this transmitter criticism must be considered as non-sahih hadith. And based on this number, 2 questions I think arise: whether really the approaches of the compilers of Al-Kutub al-Arba', I mean Kulayni, Saduq, Tusi, and other hadith compilers like Barqi, Safar, and so on and so forth, whether their approaches were transmitter criticism, because if this were the case, we would expect not to see this amount of non-sahih or non-reliable, unreliable hadith in their works. And again, even if we accept that they use this method of hadith criticism, whether we could simply say that because their methods of hadith criticism was isnad criticism, we have to follow the same method because we don't have access to the information they had. So again, I think we need to propose and use other methods of hadith criticism. And let me very quickly quote Sheikh al-Bahai's a known Shia scholar's theory on the method of hadith criticism used by, he believed that compilers of Al-Kutub al-Arba' used. Actually, I have extensively discussed this theory in my PhD thesis, but just to give you some ideas why I think, again, earlier scholars use another approach to hadith criticism, and we cannot actually apply transmitter criticism to Kutub al-Arba'. So he claims that the early compilers of hadith like Kulaini, Saduq, Tusi, and others, they consider a hadith as reliable or authentic if it was reported in many usul, and by usul or asl or kitab, I mean those sort of personal notebooks the companions of Imam al-Baqir and Imam al-Sadiq compiled. If this hadith was reported in many usul with connecting lines of transmission, they considered this particular hadith as reliable. If a hadith was repeated in one or two usul in which this particular hadith was transmitted through several diverse and valid lines, they considered this hadith as authentic. If they were extracted from a kitab was famous to be reliable, whether its author was Imami or non-Imami, they consider this hadith as reliable. And if a hadith could be found in one of the known usul related to the trustworthy companions of Imam, they considered this hadith as authentic. And if a hadith was derived from an asl presented to an Imam like Kitab Ubaydullah ibn Ali Halabi, they consider this particular hadith as authentic. This sort of approach can be also seen and extracted from Kutub al-Arba' as well. As you can see in this slide, I try to sort of put Tusi's approach to hadith criticism in this kind of algorithm, which usually is used for simplifying sort of computer programming. And if you zoom in this algorithm, there is no sort of transmitter criticism like used by contemporary scholars and those after the School of Hilla. And to know more on the School of Hilla, you can see Professor Own Hassan Ali's recent book, The School of Hilla and the Formation of 12 Shia Islamic Tradition, published by Bitores. So one might ask why we see someone like Tusi wrote about bibliographical or Rajali or Fehresti dictionaries on the trustworthiness and weakness of hadith transmitters. Sometimes he discusses the religious affiliation of these hadith transmitters and so on and so forth. So I just want to explain it very quickly, and to answer this question, I sort of compared Faqih and Tahzib and the approaches of Saduq and Tusi to see when they discuss the trustworthiness and religious affiliation of a particular hadith transmitter, what exactly they mean. So I realized that when they discuss the trustworthiness and religious affiliation of a particular hadith transmitter, they indeed want to discuss whether they can trust the unique hadith found in the book of that hadith transmitter or not. So they first check whether the content of this hadith is unique or not. If no, and can be found in other famous book, kitabs, asl, and other hadith compilations, they accept the authenticity of this hadith. And if yes, and the content of this hadith is unique, they go to the second step, which is to check the trustworthiness of the compiler of this book, not all the hadith transmitters mentioned in the isnad of this hadith. And if this hadith transmitter is trustworthy, they accept the content of this unique hadith. Or if this hadith transmitter is trustworthy and Imami, they accept the content of this hadith. And if this hadith transmitters, like As-Sakuni, is non-Imami, they reject the unique content they found in the book of, for example, As-Sakuni, not all his hadith. And they didn't sort of examine each transmitters mentioned in an isnad of a particular hadith. So again, what should we do? Either one should consider all Imami hadith as authentic and reliable, whether fiqhi or i'tiqadi hadith, eschatological hadith, theological hadith, and so on and so forth, or we cannot simply apply transmitter criticism to hadith which were not compiled based on hadith criticism. So based on transmitter criticism. This is my main actually argument. So if we want to apply a method of hadith criticism to Al-Kutub al-Arba'ah, we need either to develop a particular method of hadith criticism based on the approaches of the compilers they used for compiling these hadiths, or we need to apply another methods of hadith criticism developed in, for example, academic scholarship, or we need to develop them ourselves. And what I propose, and also what I'm doing at ICAIR, which is actually the main, some of our projects we are working on, is to apply the methods like a statistical analysis of isnads of hadith found in Al-Kutub al-Arba'ah, isnad mat analysis, sort of investigating both isnad and mat to see the mat variants and compare the mat variants with the isnad variants of a particular hadith. And also use some digital tools like machine learning, like AI, and developing digital data analytical approaches. We did actually, and we developed a data analytical approaches to examine the ahadith transmitted by ghulat to see whether really these hadiths are the result of forgery and are the result of ghulat's forgery, or they can go back to the time of Imams. For example, a hadith on the ilm al-ghaib of Imam, or the hadith on the some characteristics of Imam, unusual characteristics of Imam, whether these are the results of Qali community, or they actually can go back to the time of Imam, and Imam himself says these hadiths actually. And also another approach which I developed in my PhD thesis by bibliographical cross-reference analysis, for those of you who are familiar with Tahlil al-Fihristi proposed by Said Madadi, this is not the same actually approach, but maybe if you translate this Tahlil al-Fihristi to English, the translation would be the same, but this is not the same method. So let me very quickly provide some examples. I applied academic methods, and some examples we are working on at ICAIR. The first hadith, as you can see, is Ismahu Ismi hadith, in which the Prophet Muhammad notes that the name of the Mahdi, or Imam Zaman, will be the same as the Prophet's name, means Muhammad. And there are some sort of discussion in academia on the date of this hadith. Some say this hadith should go back to the time of Al-Nafs al-Zakiyya, to the first half of the 2nd century. But I have argued, based on the hadith found in both Shia and Sunni hadith, these hadith should go back at least to the time of Mukhtar. And first time he used this particular hadith in favor of Muhammad ibn al-Hanafiyyah, but this hadith was familiar for the community. So the date of this hadith must go back to the first half of the 1st century, to the time of, it can go back to the time of Prophet Muhammad. But as you can see and analyze the isnad of this hadith in Imami hadith collections, there are some unknown hadith transmitters, untrustworthy hadith transmitters in these isnads. Also, there is other example on Alam al-Zar. It's a hadith transmitted by Zurare from Imam al-Baqir alayhi salam. This hadith is a very controversial hadith on Alam al-Zar, the word of pre-existence. Based on some statistical analysis I have developed, it is possible to show that the origin of this hadith can go back to the time of Imam al-Baqir, the original core of this hadith. Even when you can find many unknown and weak hadith transmitter in the isnad of this hadith. And this is another hadith transmitted by Zurare on Imam Zaman's occultation, Qa'im's occultation, or Ghulam's occultation, or Mahdi's occultation. And this is actually, we are working on this project, but just to show you how applying this kind of method of academic methods of hadith criticism can inform traditional scholars as well. I just provide this example. This hadith consists of 4 layers, I think. So I can't discuss everything in detail, but I realized that the original core of this hadith can go back to the time of Imam al-Baqir. So the original core is the part of hadith that Imam al-Baqir says that for the Qa'im or Ghulam or Mahdi will be Ghaiba, occultation, and there are some other parts which we are working on to date other layers of this hadith. So for the conclusion, I would like to a little bit discuss this chart. As you can see, the origins of the vast majority of Imami hadith go back, more than 95%, go back to the time of Imam al-Baqir, Imam al-Sadiq alayhi salam, and subsequent Imams, Imam al-Kazim alayhi salam, Imam al-Riza alayhi salam, and other Imams. While for Sunni hadith, the vast majority of their hadith, all of them, go back to the 1st century. So this is the main difference between the development and transmission history of Imami hadith and Sunni hadith. And discussing the history and historicity of hadith during the 1st century, as you know, is very difficult because we don't have any sort of written evidence for that period of time, and hadith is believed to transmit in that period of time orally. But hadith in the 2nd century has been, was transmitted based on written records mostly. So this can help us to develop some sort of method of hadith criticism. And as I told you about Sheikh al-Bahai's approach to the methods of hadith criticism used by the compilers of Al-Kutub al-Arba'ah, and based on Al-Kutub al-Arba'ah themselves, we can develop some sort of method of hadith criticism based by mixing academic and traditional methods of hadith criticism found in Al-Kutub al-Arba'ah to analyze the isnads found in these books. And this, I think, facilitates the dating of Imami hadith and also examining the hujjiyah of Imami hadith, and also, and more importantly, for examining the history and historicity of i'tiqadat. one of the projects we are working on is to develop a proper method to examine the date of and the origin of the hadith about and the reports about the birth of Imam Zaman alayhi salam. So, because some scholars, some traditional scholars say that this is Khabar al-Wahid, and the isnads of these Khabar al-Wahid, they consist of weak transmitter. We can't trust the hujjiyah of these hadiths. But I think if we shift our approach from hujjiyah to the history and historicity, we can find more useful information for dating actually these hadiths. Thank you very much. And I also would like to hear your and know your comments and feedback. You can email me, or maybe later we can be in touch, inshallah. Thank you very much. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.
There we go, mashallah. Very in-depth study of hadith. So our last speaker is a friend, a longtime friend, and one of we have a few here today, but one of the foremost scholars of Shi'i studies that we have here in the United States, and he does really excellent work. Professor An Hassan Ali, who is an assistant professor in the Department of Religious Studies at the Colorado University at Boulder. He received his PhD from McGill University's Institute of Islamic Studies. His research centers on Islamic intellectual history, and he's the author of 2 books. One of them is out, the other is forthcoming. The one that's out, and I highly recommend, is The School of Hilla and the Emergence of Twelver Shi'ism, Social Networks and the Concept of Tradition. The book that's forthcoming is Why Hadith Matter, the evidentiary value of hadith in Imami law, which is co-authored with Hassan Ansari. His recent publications include The Canonization of Natural Balagha between Hilla and Najaf, As-Sistani and the Iconic Authority of the Maraja, The Rational Turn in Imamism Revisited, and some notes on the history of the categorization of Imami hadith. In addition to intellectual history, Professor Ali maintains an interest in Urdu and Persian literature. Occasionally, he publishes short commentaries on the website Qirtas wa Qalam. And you can, I highly recommend checking out this website. There's a, recently there was, he posted a commentary on Dua Komel that is really worth reading. The website is his name, An Hassan Ali, one word, .substack.com. Highly recommend it. So without further ado, he'll be our last speaker, and then we'll have 10 minutes for our speakers to respond to questions. So without further ado, please welcome Dr. Ali with a salawat. Allah.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. Sorry, some of you have seen me walking in and out of the room. I apologize. I'm feeling a little bit under the weather, and hopefully, inshallah, can make it through this presentation without too much trouble. But I just wanted to really quickly say thank you to ICAIR for inviting me here to speak, and also to the local Jama'at for their hospitality and for the organization. It's been great, and I'm really grateful for the opportunity to see old friends, people I've known for a long time, and spend some time with them as well. And in honor of that, and in honor of everybody getting together, and of course every share has a double meaning, so I'll leave it to you to decode the double meaning. But as is my custom, I like to begin with a share. So tasadduq उस करम के मैं कभी तन्हा नहीं रहता, तसद्दुक़ उस करम के मैं कभी तन्हा नहीं रहता कि जिस दिन तुम नहीं आते तुम्हारी याद आती है. सलावत भेजे मोहम्मद व आले मोहम्मद पर. So it seems like most scholars who have or will present papers this weekend understand or understand the title of the conference, God in the Modern World, to mean something like discussions about God in the modern world. But that's not how I understood the title of the conference. I took it literally. So what I want to talk about is the presence or the locus of God in the modern world. In other words, I'm going to talk about what is sometimes known in religious studies as sacred geography. Where is God? Now, of course, as the Quran says, وَلِلَّهِ الْمَشْرِقُ وَالْمَغْرِبُ فَأَيْنَمَا تُوَلُّوا فَثَمَّ وَجْهُ اللَّهِ. The east and the west belong to God. Wherever you turn, there is His face. Of course, this is true. But sacred geography explores those places where God's presence is, in a sense, more dense. And of course, there is no more dense manifestation of God in the modern world than Wajhullah alladhi ilayhi yatawajjahul awliya. Durud bejhe Muhammad wa ali Muhammad par. So the Quran in the 14th chapter and 37th verse, in this verse, Hazrat Ibrahim alayhi wa ala nabiyyina salam prays to God in the following words. Our Lord, I have established some of my offspring in an uncultivated valley close to your sacred house, Lord, so that they may keep up the prayer. Make people's hearts, and here's the key term, make people's hearts turn toward, or as Maulana Sulaiman suggested, gravitate to them and provide them with produce so that they may be thankful. Now, if you're familiar with Arabic, or if you have the ayah in your mind, you realize that there's a switching of the pronoun here. And when Imam Muhammad al-Baqir alayhi salam, he's reported to have said that God didn't mean the sacred. Can we go to the next slide? God didn't mean the sacred house, or else he would have said, turn to it. Then Imam al-Baqir swears to God and he says, we are what Hazrat Ibrahim called the people to. So in light of the Imam's explanation and other parallel ahadith, Shia scholars have raised the possibility that this verse means that Mecca derives its sanctity from the magnetism of the Imam there. And by contrast, the sanctity of a place like Karbala is intrinsic for the same reason, extending back into antediluvian times. Now, although it may seem peculiar at first, the underlying attitude towards sacred space, or this underlying attitude towards sacred space, is relatively commonplace. Can we go to the next slide? The same idea is expressed in the second hemstish attributed to the great Indian poet Hazrat Amir Khusro Dehlavi of the following beloved couplet: Har qaum rast rahe deene wa qibla gahe man qibla rast kardam bar samte kachkula hai. So for every people, its path, its religion, and its prayer direction. I have set my prayer direction straight in the way of the crooked-hatted. If you know this story, you know that Nizamuddin Awliya and Hazrat Amir Khusro Dehlavi were standing at the Ganges, looking across the river, watching Hindus bathe in the river. And in a very kind of puzzled way, Nizamuddin Awliya says, Har qaum rast rahe deene wa qibla gahe. And then Hazrat Amir Khusro completes the sher with the second line of it. That's, according to legend. So it's therefore surprising that scholars continue to privilege Mecca and Medina in accounts of the sacred geography of Islam, such as a very widely used textbook in American universities by Prothero, which is the first edition was published in 2020 on world religions. Now, please note something here is that if you, as a mu'min, wish to say that a particular place is the center of Islam, this would be a normative claim and you're entitled to make this claim. But my problem is that somebody who is claiming to be doing a descriptive task, right, writing an introduction to world religions that's to be used in undergraduate classrooms across the country, what business does this person have prioritizing Mecca and Medina over other sacred spots? And I want you to sort of keep this criticism in the back of your mind, and I'll come back to it towards the end. Sort of spoiler alert, I think one can speculate that the legacy of Orientalism, with its kind of attendant notions of center and periphery, which have been very damaging to Shiism, are still very much with us. So Orientalism is not something that we have overcome, but rather we're still dealing with its legacy. So as anybody, and of course, you know, everybody in this room is well aware that not only does the sacred geography of Shiism extend far beyond the Hijaz into Yemen and Afghanistan and Iran and Iraq and Sham and Egypt, excuse me. Shi'i literature is replete with descriptions of rituals to be performed at these sites. But the sanctity of some of these sites far exceeds or exceeds the sanctity excuse me, of Mecca and Medina. And while recent studies have explored some of this terrain, the sacred geography of Shiism is still largely uncharted territory. And I want to add something here. If you know something about a geography department in a modern university, you know that it's not about geography. It's not about what we conventionally call geography. And with that in mind, it seems to me that one would also need to include the multiple dimensions of Shi'i cosmology as a part of the sacred geography of Shiism, but that is the subject of a different paper. So building upon recent studies that call attention to sacred spaces outside of the Hijaz, this paper highlights the significance of a sanctuary in Hilla that was associated with the 12th Imam. So based on travel logs and manuscripts and hagiographies, I argue that the sanctuary had become, thank you. Based on travelogues and manuscripts and hagiographies, I argue that the sanctuary had become an important element of Imami identity by the end of the 14th century. And in addition to mediating, mediating the relationship between believers and their vanished Imam, it was imagined as a place where the faithful would be vindicated, their enemies disgraced, and the sick healed. And by drawing attention to a site that is rarely, if ever, recognized as being part of the sacred geography of Shi'ism, including by Shi'is themselves, very few people, when they go for ziyarat, go to the maqam of Sahib al-Zaman in Hilla. They may go to other maqamat, but in my experience, few people go here. Something that's rarely, if ever, acknowledged as being part of the sacred geography of Shi'ism, this paper, I think, contributes to an expansive notion of Islam's sacred geography, and in doing so, seeks to decenter Orientalist narratives about center and periphery. So first, the city of Hilla itself holds a unique place in Shi'i lore. So according to Shi'i sources, when Amir al-Mu'mineen reached Safin, he stopped on a solitary hill and he pointed toward a thicket near Babel, and he said, "A city, what a city, Madinatun wa ayu Madinatin." When he's asked to clarify the meaning of this cryptic remark, he says, there will be a city here called Al-Hilla Al-Sayfiyya that a man from the Banu Asad will build. In it, an excellent people will emerge. If one of them were to swear by God, then God would fulfill this oath. Incidentally, that's the dedication in my book. إِلَى قَوْمٍ أَخْيَارٍ لَوْ أَقْسَمَ أَحَدُهُمْ إِلَى اللَّهِ لَأَبَرَّ قَسَمًا. I think many people assumed, not that I mind, but many people assumed that that was a dedication to the Imams. In fact, it was a dedication to the ulama of Hilla, but I suppose it doesn't matter that much. Salawat bihi Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. So as it happens, a man from the Banu Asad, Sayf al-Dawla al-Mazyadi, did build a great city in southern Iraq on the western bank of the Euphrates called Al-Hilla Al-Sayfiyya, which was the center of Imami scholarship from about the middle of the 12th century to the middle of the 15th century. This is what it's known as Madrasat al-Hilla. I believe Khafaji was the one who coined this term in an article that was first published in Turathuna, the great Iraqi journal, Madrasat al-Hilla min al-Nushu'i ila al-Qimma. But despite its significance, aside from a very few scattered remarks, we don't really know much about the religious topography of the city during this period. One exception, however, is the maqam of Sahib al-Zaman. So here's the description, and actually it's much longer than this. For the sake of time, I sort of pared it down to the essential portion of it. But here is a description, or Ibn Battuta's description, of what took place at this sanctuary every day. So he says, every evening before sunset, 100 of the townspeople go with arms and drawn swords to the governor of the city and receive from him a saddled and bridled horse or mule. With this, they go in procession with drums beating and trumpets and bugles blowing, 50 of them in front and 50 behind, while others walk to the right and the left to the sanctuary of the Master of the Age. They halt at the door and call out, in the name of God, O Master of the Age, in the name of God, come forth. Corruption is abroad, and injustice is strife. This is the hour of thy advent, that by thee God may uncover the true from the false. They continue to call out thus, sounding their drums, bugles, and trumpets until the hour of sunset prayers, for they hold that Muhammad ibn al-Hasan al-Askari, Ajjalallahu ta'ala farajahu al-Sharif, entered this mosque and disappeared from sight, and that he will emerge from it, for he, in their view, is the expected Imam. Now, Ibn Battuta is the only source that mentions anything resembling this ritual, and the account has been criticized by Ahmad Majid al-Hilli, among others, in a very nice book on the maqam. But again, whether the details are true or not, we actually do have other sources for the history of the sanctuary and its role in the religious life of Hilla. One other thing that I should mention is Maqam Radd al-Shams in Hilla. Unfortunately, some of the history, we know by the time of Ibn Shahrashub, there was a site in Hilla recognized as being Maqam Radd al-Shams. However, we don't know the history, or I don't know the history of the structure just yet. So that's one of those things that inshallah, hopefully, I can do in the future. Okay. So we do have other sources for the history of the sanctuary and its role in the religious life of Hilla. So the earliest mention of the sanctuary is from the year, I'll just do Miladi years to make it easier. So it's from the year 1216, when Ibn Nama al-Hilli built or reconstructed. Ammara, the verb is ambiguous, so we're not exactly sure, but either built or reconstructed houses for study, buyut al-dars, next to the sanctuary, and brought a group of fuqaha to live there. So the sanctuary itself must have existed before 1216, and depending on the meaning of ammara, a madrasa may have existed next to the sanctuary before this date too. Now the fact that Ibn Nama brought a group of jurists to live there suggests that it was a place for advanced scholarship, and the subsequent history of the site affirms this suggestion. Let me go very quickly. So in 1256, Najmuddin al-Tabari made a copy of Nahj al-Balagha at the sanctuary. At the beginning of the 14th century, Ibn al-Haddad al-Amili, who died in 1338, he wrote Ad-Durra al-Nadida fi Sharh al-Abahath al-Mufida near the sanctuary, and this is a commentary on al-Abhath al-Mufida fi Tahqiq al-Aqida, which is an abridgment of Allama's Minhaj al-Hidayah wa Mi'raj al-Diraya. And Mahmud ibn Muhammad ibn Badr made a copy of Tahrir al-Ahkam at the sanctuary in 1301. In 1355, Ja'far ibn Muhammad al-Iraqi compared his copy of Qawa'id with a copy located at the sanctuary. So some of these titles may be unfamiliar to you, but there are many of, or all of them are, with the exception of Minhaj al-Balagha, are associated with Allama. And so Allama had a particular presence at the sanctuary. Now, his brother, Ja'far ibn Muhammad al-Iraqi's brother, Hussein, completed another copy of Qawa'id al-Ahkam at the sanctuary in 1374, which was verified by his brother Ja'far in 1384. Finally, there's a copy of Al-Mukhtasar al-Nafi', which was made at the madrasa adjacent to the sanctuary in 1537. So this is kind of the history of scholarship at the site, but in addition to being a site for scholarship, the sanctuary occupied as a space in the sacred geography of Imamism too. And this is clear from the following report about an encounter between Ibn Abil Jawad al-Nu'mani and the 12th Imam. So al-Nu'mani says, "My master, you have a sanctuary in al-Nu'maniya and one in Hilla, so where are you in those sanctuaries?" The Imam says, "I am in al-Nu'maniya on Tuesday night and Wednesday. On Friday and Thursday night I am in Hilla, but the people of Hilla do not behave properly at my sanctuary. No one enters my sanctuary with decorum, behaving properly, greeting me and the Imams, blessing me and them 12 times, then performing 2 rak'ah of salat with 2 chapters of the Quran, one in each cycle after the Fatiha, confiding in God in each rak'ah with fervent prayer, but that God, may He be exalted, grants him what he asks, one of which is forgiveness." And Nu'mani says, "My master, teach me that fervent prayer." And the Imam says, "Say, O God, you have chastised me until hardship befell me, and you are the most merciful of those who have mercy. Though the sins I have committed merit many times as much chastisement, you are gentle, patient. You forgive so much that your forgiveness and your mercy outstrip your punishment." Nu'mani says, he repeated it to me 3 times and I memorized it. Now, this encounter is related by Ibn al-Khazin al-Ha'iri, who studied under Shahid. Shahid, of course, dies in 1384. And issued Ibn Fahd al-Ijaza in 1389. So that means that by the end of the 14th century, a specific ritual was prescribed for the site. And although there's practically no information about Ibn Abil Jawad al-Nu'mani, based on the fact that Ibn al-Khazin al-Ha'iri related the encounter, he may belong to the 14th century as well. And that would make sense, because as the history of scholarly activity at the site also indicates, the 14th century seems to have been something of a heyday for the sanctuary. So in a book, a very important book, called As-Sultan al-Mufarrij an Ahl al-Iman, which appears to have been written in 1387 by Sayyid Bahauddin ibn Abdul Karim al-Nili, who died in 1400. He relates 3 miracles that took place. We have to differentiate between mu'ajiza and karama because of the previous talk. These are karamat, not mu'ajizat. So he relates 3 miraculous incidents that took place at the sanctuary in the 14th century. So in the first story, there's a man from Hilla whose name is Abu Rajih al-Hammami, and he's brought before the ruler of Hilla for cursing the companions. He's beaten severely and he's left for dead. The next morning, he's found in perfect health, performing the ritual prayer with no signs of the brutal beating he received the day before. Now, when he's questioned about his condition, He says, when death was inevitable and I no longer had a tongue with which to supplicate God, may He be exalted, I asked with my heart and sought help from my Lord and Master, Sahibul Zaman. When night fell upon me, all of a sudden there was an abode filled with light, and there was my Master, Sahibul Zaman. He passed his honorable hand over my face and said, rise and return to your family, for God, may He be exalted, has healed you. I awoke in the state that you see. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. The second story involves two men. Now, this is where we may be entering into tropological territory, but in any case, the second story involves two men, an Imami named Ibn al-Khattab and a Sunni called Uthman, who argued constantly, as one might expect. And in a public gathering at the sanctuary of the Prophet Hazrat Ibrahim, Ibn al-Khattab challenges Uthman. He says, I will write the names of those whom I love on my hand, and they are Ali, Hassan, and Hussein, and you write the names of those whom you love, Abu Bakr, Umar, and Uthman. Then my hand will clasp your hand, and whichever hand burns with fire is wrong, and whichever hand remains unharmed is right. Uthman shirks from this challenge and refuses to participate, whereupon the crowd that has gathered begins shouting at him. Uthman's mother hears the commotion and comes to her son's defense, cursing the crowd. She's instantly blinded, though her eyes appear to be fine. She's taken to the physicians of Baghdad. In these stories, the physicians are always from Baghdad. But he's taken to the physicians of Baghdad and Hilla for treatment, but they cannot do anything for her. Some of her friends, who are Imami women, tell her that the one who blinded her is the Qa'im. They guarantee that if she were to become Shi'i, express love for the house of the Prophet, and express enmity for their enemies, then God would heal her. She accepts their proposal, and they take her to the sanctuary of the 12th Imam on Thursday night. She's brought inside the sanctuary, and the rest of the women sleep outside. When a quarter of the night has passed, she emerges healed and rejoices with her friends. When questioned about what happened inside the sanctuary, she says, when you placed me in the sanctuary and left, I felt a hand on my hand. Someone said, arise, for God, may He be exalted, has healed you. My blindness was lifted, and I saw the sanctuary filled with light. I saw a man to whom I said, who are you, my Lord? He said, Muhammad ibn al-Hasan, and disappeared. After this incident, which is said to have taken place in 1323, she and her son Uthman became Shi'i. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. So in the third and last story, Jamaluddin al-Zahdari is afflicted with semi-paralysis, falij, and his grandmother treats him with every known remedy, but to no avail. She takes him to physicians in Baghdad who treat him for a long time, but nothing comes of their treatment either. Someone advises her to take her grandson to the sanctuary of the 12th Imam, which she does, and he's cured. And then later on, when he tells the story, al-Zahdari says that he was lying in the sanctuary when the 12th Imam told him to rise. He said, my Lord, I have not been able to stand for 2 years. And the Imam said, rise by God's leave. May He be exalted, and helped Zahdari stand. So what these stories tell us, and they may tell us more than what I'm about to say, but at the very least, what they tell us is that by the end of the 14th century, when a Sultan al-Mufarrij was completed, the sanctuary had become an important element of a localized imamism. It mediated the relationship between believers and their vanished imam, and it was sanctified by a specific ritual that ensured one's prayers were answered and sins forgiven. It was imagined as a place where the faithful would be vindicated, their enemies disgraced, and the sick healed. Perhaps what these stories reveal more than anything else is a desire to memorialize a city past its zenith, a city that at the turn of the 14th century was beginning to lose its place at the center of Imami learning and would soon be outshone by the luminaries of Jabal Amil. Now, I have something to say about the subsequent history of the sanctuary, but I'm not going to say that for the sake of time. If you're super interested, you can catch me afterwards and I can explain it to you. But in conclusion, so those of you who are Pakistani, you know that it's not uncommon to hear the following joke in Pakistan. A Pakistani man who has finally saved enough money to make the pilgrimage to Mecca, the Hajj, stands before the Kaaba in awe, and tears are rolling down his face. He takes his cell phone out, he calls his mother, and he says, I finally made it. please go to the shrine of Data Ganj Bakhsh and pray for me. Right? So among other things, the joke exemplifies how the legacy of Orientalism has distorted the relative significance of spaces in the sacred geography of Islam. It's well known that Shi'is regard the pilgrimage to Karbala as being more meritorious than the supererogatory Hajj. Although the sanctuary of the 12th Imam in Hilla never acquired the status of a Karbala or a Najaf, it was nevertheless an important sacred space, especially for the Shia of Hilla. And by calling attention to this little known site, its history, and its role in the religious and socio-political life of Hilla, I hope that this paper contributes to an expansive notion of the sacred geography of Islam. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
What a wonderful display of an important part of Shi'i heritage, both in geography and in history. Not just Professor Ali's paper, but all the papers, really. Now, a bit of an update. Because of time, we are not going to have a Q&A. Instead, if anyone wants to ask those on this panel questions, that'll be combined with the Q&A at the end, if that comes up. And at this point, we're going to just have a 5-minute comfort break and then come back for the final panel, inshallah. Okay, salawat. Allah.
Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Salawat ala Muhammad wa ala ali Muhammad. Okay, everyone, I know it's been something of a long day. And I understand, like any good academic, I understand the importance of caffeine for functioning at this time in the afternoon. I just want to thank those of you who've been here since the morning for your dedication. We're now going to be beginning our third panel of the day, which is on faith